Welcome to LNL Podcast. My name is Josh.
And I'm Michele.
And we talk to you about Connecticut 2A issues. Today is going to be a conversation between me and Michele.
You're welcome to join in with comments.
Yeah. Yep. So a little different. We're not really going to be talking about a bill or anything. We're going to talk about the increase in gun store break-ins in Connecticut. So we're in 2025 now. And thus far, there's been 2 gun store break-ins. We are in April, and this is right about the time where it happened last year. So in 2024,
warmer out.
In 2024, to the best of my knowledge, there were 18 attempted gun store break-ins in Connecticut with 9 successful burglaries.
So 9 included in that 18? Or 9? 18
attempts, 9 successful of the 18 attempts.
Okay. So
yep, so 50% success rate.
Fantastic. That's a good success rate.
Yeah.
If you're a bad guy.
Yeah. And those are scattered everywhere in Connecticut, basically South Windsor and below. So if we cut that line right there, there's nothing really above that, at least to my knowledge, right? It definitely could be missing one or something, or something wasn't reported.
In Litchfield County either, right?
Yeah, not to my knowledge. So a lot of it was
84, 91.
84, 91, 95. Your major highways, 691. And why? So let's go back to 2022, where in the state of Connecticut, there were 2 gun store burglaries. Fast forward to 2024, 18 attempts. Why? That's what we're going to talk about.
Well, if you look at the policies being passed forward from our Connecticut government, they are very pro-criminal. They have basically, for lack of a better term, neutered our police departments with the liability to the point where they don't want to put their jobs on the line or their houses on the line because they took all of that away from them, all their immunity.
Yeah, the qualified immunity with the Police Accountability Act that was passed in 21, I believe. Could be off by.
No, yeah, it was right around there. And I get the concept. You're trying to stop bad cops. So, but I liken it to gun control. When you pass those kinds of bills, you end up hurting the good guys, and the bad guys still do whatever they want.
So in a few of the cases from last year in 2024, police responded quickly and either started pursuits and had to stop the pursuits due to that policy.
Correct.
Which, if you're the criminal and you know that, why are you going to stop? Right? You're going to keep driving.
They're always going to keep driving. They just know they just have to drive a little bit longer just to get away.
And it takes them a substantial amount of time to find them if they are found.
But even when they're caught,
they get out. So a lot of them are minors too. And it is so something with the federal government and the minor aspect. If you're an adult, you're over the age of 21, possibly over 18, but at least 21, and you break into a gun store, you're going to be charged with federal gun charges. Not if you're a minor. Minors will only be charged from the feds if it's a terroristic aspect.
However, Connecticut, that's one of the bills on the table this year, is to make, and they actually had a lot of people opposing it, which I thought was ridiculous. But it was specifically written in the law that any juvenile that is caught or, for a gun crime, which could be breaking in, it could be holding a gun, it could be any of that, then they automatically get charged as an adult. And many people actually opposed it and thought it was horrible. But at the end of the day, I personally think it would make them think twice. Right now, they get a get out of jail free card.
Basically,
they're clean. No matter what they do, they're not going to have to do any real time.
And they cause thousands, tens of thousands of dollars in damages. And then everyone, when this happens, I look on social media, right? I go to Facebook or wherever it's posted, and it normally gets out that it happens, right? Whether the store maybe post it, maybe, Breaking Now post it, or the police department or something. And you look at these comments, And I'll say 80, 70%. 70% are normally in sympathy to the small business owner. 30% are true, utter assholes.
For lack of a better term.
I lacked any better terms, so I stuck with the word that went into my brain. I didn't come up with a better term there. So yeah.
Well, a lot of them are just like, good. Gun stores shouldn't be there. They shouldn't be allowed to operate.
They should have this. They should have that. And I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but I can tell non-business owners very quickly. I can tell the W-2 employee. And there's nothing wrong with a W-2 employee, but until you've owned a business, and it doesn't have to be a gun business, until you've owned a business, you have zero idea how businesses operate. And it is very clear in the way people talk or think that have never touched owning a business in their life.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. The insurance covers it.
Yeah, and then the insurance drops you.
Right.
If they cover it at all.
But see, those same people, if somebody broke into a convenience store, which is also happening quite often.
Yeah, smoke shops,
any of those, you don't have that awfulness coming in that they deserve.
That's a good point.
It's again, we're back in the industry. But the industry, so we're behind the eight ball all over the place. And then you have the criminals more and more emboldened, which... why wouldn't they continue to break in? This is a freaking cash cow for them because the cops can't chase them. And now they've got, 9 guns here, 10 guns here, 12 guns
27
here.
guns over here.
And they don't care about the backside of the business having to deal with ATF, having to deal with inventory loss, having to deal with insurance losses, having to deal with replacing said inventory.
To deal with a livelihood that you support your family on being severely damaged.
And your employees.
Who
are not working because you now have to fix your building. It's not about even just, they took guns. There's so much more behind this.
Yeah. The insurance comment irks me to all hell. Well, the insurance will cover it. Have you used insurance ever on anything? Because they suck.
I had my home insurance. Now, one of the hurricanes we had way back when, I called my insurance company because I had no power for a week. Okay.
So food went bad.
And I said to him, if I wanted to put in a claim for bad food, how would I go about it? So they told me, and they said, do you want to put in a claim? I said, no, I just wanted to know in case I need to, because I had coolers and stuff. And they said, oh, okay. They dropped me the next year because they said, I looked at having a claim. I'm like, all I did was ask for information. Like, what the hell?
These insurance companies are horrible.
That has nothing to do with this.
Yeah, so guns, guys. A lot of you probably have no idea about this. I can't go to Allstate or Geico or State Farm. You have to find specialty insurance. And you add the word special in front of anything and prices go up very quickly.
Mine goes up more because I'm a manufacturer. I cannot call a broker. Ouch. I have to go through a special avenue to get insurance.
Yeah, so I have a broker. And I'll say this publicly. He's Lockton. And that's what I started with my instructor insurance. It's what a lot of instructors probably use. And then I was like, hey, I got an FFL. Do you do gun stores? And they're like, yeah. And I don't think I realized at that time it wasn't them insuring me. They were just the middleman, which is fine. I know that now. And then, you go through them, and I have them for like workers' comp now. They found me a workers' comp policy. I have trip and fall. I have personal property. I have my instructor insurance. I pay for my instructor's insurance. So I think I have like 5-6 policies through them, but they're not through Lockton. They're just the middle.
Are they through different companies for each different item?
Yeah. Except for the 2 instructors, I think, are the same, but yeah.
So you have all different policies with all different companies, so you got to track it all.
No, that's what their job is for. Okay. I mean, I have the policies, like I have them printed out in like PDFs. But like, yeah, if there's an issue, I call them, and then they're like, oh, you need to call this person. This is the number. This is the policy.
Oh, that's nice.
So like, there's that, but they're Monday through Friday. So like, but getting back on to the topic of gun store break-ins, we're in 2025 in April, and we now have had 2. And I unfortunately think this will continue, and it makes me very upset. I think is a proper word for that.
It's a hard-hitting word. I'm upset. How are your feels? Are your feels getting at you?
You want me to keep this PG, or we want to go hard here? I was trying to stay away from this. If you guys follow us, you know that like we were one of them. And so as somebody that this has happened to, I feel really bad for the other people going through this.
Well, they have no income coming in. They've got to put all this money out, and just the stress.
Yeah, the stress. So from the human aspect.
You know your guns are on the street.
There's that. Just from the human aspect, from a business standpoint. This is how I make money for my family. This is how I support myself. And like, you know, that extrapolates to the other stores and everything. That's how they make their money, and that's how they support their families. Mad, angry, sad, go through the range of emotions. And then it makes me angry that nothing gets done about it. That cops are doing their jobs with one hand tied behind their back, handcuffed behind their back.
And it's not their choice.
And they can only go so fast. And then even when they're sure of who did it, they have to go back and forth with the district attorney and making sure whatever they're doing is proper to 100%. I mean, maybe that's the wrong words. Maybe not proper. That the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And that this checkbox is checked off, and this one, you know, has an X through it, whatever it is, and getting that. Now, when it comes to gun stores, at least you have the federal government that partially gets involved here, right? The ATF comes in and does an audit, and then you have fun, which is super duper fun. And then you have normally a special agent who's assigned to the case too. I do believe the rumor going around last year with this rash of gun store break-ins is that the FBI was possibly involved. Now, they have more resources. Obviously, they have different rules to follow.
They are, but they're slow.
Yeah. And there's only, you know, so many, you know, agents that can be dedicated to this, or even not dedicated. They're probably not dedicated.
Well, the problem, too, is these guys are smart. You know, they used to say, oh, criminals are always stupid. Criminals are just stupid. And truthfully, today's criminals are not necessarily stupid. Your person actually breaking into the store, yes. The person behind the scenes, not so much. They've gotten very good with technology. They've gotten very good with just smarts and thinking things through. And they purposely put these juveniles or the kids that, or the guys that they're like, you know, the guy goes, oh, I don't care. Well, good, then you go. You know, but the smart ones aren't getting caught. And by doing this, I don't know where I was going with this whole thing. I'm sorry, guys. I lost my train of thought.
You need Alpha Brain by Joe Rogan.
We need to just start I'll get back to it. No, but it somehow, with the cops not being able to do their job, they know that these people breaking in can get away with it, and yet our Connecticut government blames them. Yep. And the FBI getting involved. Yes. Oh, this is where I was going. Yes, they are trying to get involved. But with each city or town having a different break-in, you've got to now get all those towns to give one agency all the information, because it doesn't just, there's no flow through everybody at once. You know, this department does this, that department does that. That department doesn't necessarily have access to what the other departments did. So it slows that whole process down. And in the meantime, we're still sitting out here with our asses hanging out. And that's just the way it is. You know, this being in the industry is a high-risk industry. That's why we pay so much for insurance. That's why we pay so much for rents, because a lot of times we have a higher rent depending on where we're located, because they, you know, anticipate there might be some damage. You know, there's just a higher cost, period. And
then you have consumers that nickel and dime you.
Yes.
And I'll objectively say that when, you know, you have customers that come in and they're normally not the regulars, right? The regulars have picked you for XYZ reason, right? That's why you go to the same barber all the time.
That's why That's
why you go to the same grocery store all the time. That's why you go to the same restaurant on Mondays, you know, almost all the time, or whatever, right? Creatures of habit.
Yes.
And then you get the random customers, right? Which I'm always happy to see. Always happy to see new people. And then they come out and they're like, oh, well, do you have XYZ gun? Let's use a Glock 19, right? The world's most generic gun in the world. And they're like, oh, this store has it for $7 less. Well, go have fun taking a number at that store and go and have fun doing the paperwork and taking 2 hours to do that.
That's but that's better. That's only a $7 change difference. I have customers come to me
just using a number.
And now, my holsters are not high priced.
No.
Okay. It's a middle of the road.
Yeah, not
nice
the
price.
People.
Well, I get the customer.
Also that quality.
Right. And they come in and they go, oh, I didn't realize it was going to be that much. I can get it on Amazon for 20.
Go ahead.
Like, you can't get mine on Amazon for 20.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, so what are you going to do about it? I'm like, I would say go to Amazon if that's what you want to do. And, first time I ever did it, I think my husband looked at me and was like, what did you just do? I'm like, seriously, we are never going to win with that. And we have rent to pay. We have bills to pay. We have insurance to pay. I can't.
There's so much overhead. Not you guys, sorry. Like in general, people don't realize the cost of overhead on a business. Like,
but that's not to whine either. We're not whining about that.
No,
that's
but
something we all take on.
I want to inform and I want to educate people too at the same time. And yeah, my prices might be more expensive here and it might be cheaper here and it might be the same here. Customer service is an experience. Customer service is what we pride ourselves on here. Yes. Not to plug ourselves, but I'm going to do it anyways. #1 rated gun store in Google in Connecticut. That is hard, right? That is a goal I have had, and we accomplished that honestly like a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I like that. And I tell people, I'm like, in other business owners, other different businesses, like push your Google reviews. And while maybe I'm, $10 more on this Glock, or maybe I'm $5 less on this Glock, we build better relationships in other areas, right? The efficiency aspect, right? Paperwork.
I love that my customers will come back over and over, and eventually they become friends almost. Yep. Maybe we don't go out for dinner and stuff, but when I see them, I know about their family. I know this, I know that. I love doing that part. I love that my customers, when we get our reviews, it's always, they were helpful. They answered the phone. And I know that sounds so stupid.
Answering the phone apparently is a thing, guys.
It's like, to me, I'm like, well, of course I answered the phone. Like,
sometimes I want to throw the phone in the road.
But I guess there's also a lot of companies that just either have robo or you just leave a message and it goes into like message hell. So, and I get it from all over the country. I'll get somebody, and the best was I had one customer, I answered the phone page here at Holsters, and he goes, oh my God. I'm like, are you okay? It's like, oh my God, how do I answer this? Yeah. And he goes, you answered the phone.
Yeah.
I said,
I tried.
I said, well, yes, of course I did. You called my phone number. Yeah. And he goes, I haven't been able to reach anybody, any other holster company. I'm like, all right, cool. He goes, I'm ordering from you. I was like, okay. Yeah. So a simple act of answering the phone and being polite. Nice.
Yeah, that and the amount of questions, right? So like people ask us questions all the time, and I'm like, I'm more than happy to answer them. Some of them, I've actually told this to probably 2 or 3 people. I'm like, this is a much more complex conversation, and I have customers in front of me right now. If you want to come down to the store, though, I will multitask and talk to you until I close, and then I'll kick you out because I'm going home to the very pregnant wife. But until then, totally fine. And like I've had people come down and ask the questions, right? And it turns into like an hour-long conversation. And as long as I'm multitasking, if I'm by myself that day, like that's totally fine. Come and ask the questions. While we're not lawyers, very clear on that. Neither Michelle or I are lawyers. Play them on a podcast.
I'm kidding.
Armed attorneys were coming for your podcast. I actually started watching them recently. Talking about like federal stuff. It was pretty interesting. They're out of Texas. But going back to the
criminal aspect.
The criminals.
So let me ask you, all right, because this is really just us talking.
Yeah, nobody's watching.
Not now. Do you think it's going to change? Because I'm afraid.
I think it'll change when one of them doesn't go home.
One of the legislators?
No, one of the criminals. I think it'll change. I think the gun store break-ins will stop when one of them gets violently hurt.
They don't. They're hitting wee hours of the morning, and most gun stores...
They're crashing cars into buildings now.
Yes, but they're not doing it when you're there.
Yeah, I get that, but accidents happen. Bricks happen. Steel happens.
See, I don't see that. I think it has to be reactive from someone inside.
Could be. Somebody could be getting to a store early. The last break-in happened, I think it was 5:25 in the morning, right? An hour later, You know, are people getting to the store? Are they coming in to do paperwork early? Is there a class happening?
Not me.
You know,
That's too early for me.
Probably. But what if it's late, right? You've been, I'm sure, at your store until the wee hours at night. And so you're leaving, but then they're trying to maybe break in or something. I think.
No, we've had issues where I've walked out and you've had your sketch and you've had issues. And there's
so
people...
I think until something unfortunately happens, which I'm not wishing that happens. I am clearly not wishing that happens to anyone.
No.
But I think, you know, 1 + 1 starts to equal 2 here, and I think it will happen eventually.
You think they will? I think that they'll just double down and bring in somebody else to do it because they'll be like, oh, okay, that's part of it.
I think
when you
if
break
any
the law.
Yeah, but I think if one of them takes the room temperature challenge, I think is when it changes.
You have more faith than I do. I don't have faith in that.
They got to have some common sense, right?
No. Look at gang members. Look at gangs. They kill each other left, right, and center. It doesn't stop them. They continue to do it.
Yeah.
And you know, whether this is a gang ring or this is a firearms ring that's gotten their jaws into Connecticut, whatever the case may be, I don't see it. But that's me. And I like your idea. I wish I could. I just don't.
Yeah,
Life
I don't think unless
matter to them as much.
That's definitely a possibility. Maybe and I think that was my only out there was that aspect.
I got nothing
else. It's either going to continue until law enforcement can actually do their jobs.
I think it's
state or federal or whatever.
Or one of us gets hurt and the state's on the hook for passing the laws they did. And if those lawsuits hit, now again,
Cameron Ackerson's going to have a field day.
Never want to see that happen.
He's going to be the attorney for that.
Well, I can see something like that because that would put the legislators on notice. Yep. And they'd have to do something because, you know, they only do something when there's a tragedy.
Yep.
And it might be the criminal because we like to back those too. So that could be the tragedy that changed things, but it wouldn't change it in our favor. So, you know, I don't know.
When is one of these smaller, and I've thought about it here where I'm like, well, why don't I sleep in the shop at night?
I know a lot of places that have done it for overnights periodically. Yeah. We've done it.
And it's, and is that the night that they try something?
It never is though. No. That's the kicker.
But what if it is one night and then that case, kind of what you brought up, right? You get hurt or they get hurt. Because as a business owner, when we talk about self-defense in Connecticut, your business, while we don't have stand our ground, you have the castle doctrine aspect, which is a whole other, we could do a podcast on castle doctrine. That might be a good podcast.
Especially in gun stores, you have a little more leeway.
As the business owner, you do. You have that just in a general business, you have a castle doctrine and you still have to meet other criteria to use deadly force, or use physical force, right? It's not just like here's your golden ticket. Like there's a lot of laws. You know what? Maybe we'll do that in a future podcast. I'll pull up USCCA curriculum as a USCCA instructor and we'll read through it and discuss it. Cause then I'm not talking from a legal standpoint from a lawyer, but I'm talking about approved curriculum. So maybe we'll do that.
Well, and if you look, you can look at the Castle Doctrine statute. As long as you're saying what the statute is, that's already out there, public knowledge.
I got an idea for a podcast.
And we have loose Castle Doctrine for our homes, but in businesses, it's a slight difference.
If you guys want to hear a podcast about that, comment below or send us a message and let us know. So YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Alexa, Facebook, Instagram, any of those, especially YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, hit the little notification bell somewhere below here. Over there. No, maybe it's over there. I don't know where I am.
It's somewhere below.
Yeah, it's somewhere down there. And hit that. So then when we post stuff, you guys get notified. And then tell your friends too. Hit the little share button, throw it up on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, or I don't know what else you guys use. Truth Social. That's a Trump thing. I don't know.
Well, and the more you like and share, and the more you watch, the bigger our reach gets. And if you share it with your friends, the reach gets bigger. The bigger we get, the more content we'll have. The more we have the ability to do for you guys and give you more information.
Give you better content. Maybe I can pay a producer. Maybe I can get better chairs than this. These chairs aren't bad. I just got these new chairs, guys. I mean, nice, I know you guys can't see anything other than what I let you see here. but
comfy.
yeah, and it's a little bit, we had the table before, now we're in this little chair thing going on, and it's more of like a conversation than like an interview, I feel like.
Yeah, when we bring guests in, we're not like, okay, sit there, don't move, and we're going to ask you questions.
Yeah. So, I don't know, I like to set up a little bit more. We change some things, we'll see if it works. But going to back to the original topic here and wrapping up, the break-ins need to stop. That bill, the police accountability bill passed, and
there's several
correlation is not causation or something, right?
Yes.
But like when 1 + 1 starts to equal 2 here, and 2 + 2 = fish, I'm just saying.
And it's been getting worse and worse and worse. However, this year they did propose several pro law enforcement bills. Some of them are minutia that I think is kind of silly that we have to actually make a bill. Some of them were actually very good. So they were allowing the officers to do their jobs again in certain aspects. I didn't print those out, so I don't have them specifically, but they are on, if you go to Legiscan or if you go to ct.gov and look up proposed bills, they are there. So there are quite a few. I was actually impressed. When I read through it the first time, because I get notified by the police officers commission or something like that. They send me all that stuff all the time. And I read it through the first time and I went, holy crap. The state's actually, we have legislators up there that are actually going to support our officers.
Again,
Awesome.
Will it pass?
I think some of them will, because some of them are almost like, how can you not? But then again, I don't want to challenge anybody.
All right, so if you guys have a podcast idea for us, drop it in the comments below. Other than that, my name is Josh.
And I'm Michelle.
And we will see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye. Lock and Load Podcast is sponsored by Lock and Load Firearms, Connecticut's #1 rated gun store and pistol permit class on Google. Come check us out, 1573 Meriden Waterbury Turnpike in Southington. Lock and Load Firearms.
Lock and Load Podcast is also sponsored by Patriot Wear Holsters, custom-made Kydex holsters locally made in Waterbury, Connecticut. www.patriotwearholster.com and use code LNLPodcast for 10% off your purchase. Orders available for shipping or pickup at various locations.